Welcome to the HSCG Mastermaker podcast. I'm here with Robyn French-Smith of Bath, Fizz and Foam. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you. Hi, Leigh.
Hi, it's so good to have you here. I'm really interested in this topic myself because I was a maker before I became involved with the association, and bath bombs were seriously the bane of my existence. So
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
yeah, I loved them and my customers loved them, but I just could not get them to work. So I'm really interested in this topic and I'm sure I'm going to learn a ton too. So let's get right to it.
Okay.
All right. So can you start by sharing a little bit about your background and how Bath Fizz and Foam came to be?
Sure. Bath and Foam is my third business, and Scandalous Soap Co. is both my second and fourth business. So I've kind of had a lot fingers in a lot of pies with that very first original business I had with a friend. And I was the soap maker and she was the bath bomb maker, and never the two should cross. When we split, I just took soap with me because I was like, this is great. I can just do soap all the time. I don't have to worry about those stinking bath bombs. And I started having customers ask for bath bombs. And so I started playing around with them, and I could not make them work, which for a straight A student, this is like terrible. It's the worst thing that could ever happen.
Very
It's to,
frustrating.
like you're failing at something. Yeah. I had a friend give me a recipe, and they're like, this is the perfect recipe. It's going to work all the time, no matter what. And it just wouldn't work for me.
Right.
And so I started kind of digging into like the little myths that existed, the little old wives' tales that existed, like you have to do this thing or that thing, the kind of the superstitions that were kind of in there. And I just started kind of tearing it apart and being like, well, that's not true. And this is true, but it's only true because of this thing. And just kind of starting to analyze it. And so I cracked it for myself. And then I wanted to help other people because I like to help other people. And so that kind of just evolved naturally. And I had been writing blog articles for Amanda on Love and Soap. And one day I was just like, how do you feel if I just kind of focus on bath bombs? Because I feel like there is so much really good information about soap out there. I think a novice soap maker could today, without ever having any experience, follow some YouTube tutorials and make a perfect batch of soap. And that is not true for bath bombs, or it wasn't at the time, right? That's what I want to do. I want to fill in that gap where there's this kind of lack of information. And so that's just kind of where we started, and it grew organically from there.
That's nice. And bath bombs too are like sought after by customers because there's that feeling about bath bombs when you put a bath bomb in and it's like a whole bath experience. And I think people really love them for that reason. The other thing is this industry, I feel, is so good like that. Your story is very indicative of a lot of stories I've heard where you crack something and you don't hold it to yourself or, be like, that took me, years to perfect. So I'm not telling anybody about it. I find that a lot of people would like to share. That's what makes this industry so nice, is that people share the knowledge that they gain.
And I think that that's especially true, I find, in soaping circles. And at the time for cosmetic makers, because the bath isn't fun, we do all kinds of stuff. Like we have all kinds of formulations, like probably 30 different formulations that we sell. Just bath bombs is what I'm got the time for, right? But when I first started, there was kind of this like, well, I took years for me to figure out how to do it, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it. And I just didn't like that. Somebody had to teach you how to do it. We're always trying to push the next person up. So, and now we've built a community where we have that happening and it's rippling out. And I love seeing that.
Me too. That is excellent. And we too, we need to encourage the younger generations to get into this as well, because the demographic for this industry is older. So how are we going to do that if we hold and hoard all the knowledge that we've gained over the years? We do need to pass it down. So I really applaud you for doing that. So let's keep going. What drew you specifically to specialize in bath bombs? Like, what do you love about bath bombs?
Oh, I mean, personally, I had only used a few bath bombs from Lush and I did not like them. It was like when people were asking for bath bombs, I was just ew, kind of ew, because
Right.
I, my dear, am a soaper. Okay, I have sophistication. I kind of was an elitist or snobby about them initially because I'd had negative experiences. And so that was the other thing that I kind of wanted to answer. And I try to tell this when I'm talking to other entrepreneurs is like, create the thing that you wish existed.
Right.
Right. And so I wish that there was a bath bomb. Like I was shocked the first time I used one and it dissolved it all at one time. I didn't know that it was supposed to do that. And I was like, I just dissolved $8. No, it's in my bathtub. And so I was not aware that they're supposed to do that. And so for me, it was like, how can I make it last longer in the tub so a customer doesn't feel like they just watched $8 dissolve in 30 seconds? How can I make sure that it doesn't stain the tub, that it's
Yep.
enjoyable, that it's exciting, that it's beautiful?
Like fragrance driven, you know what I mean? Sometimes you get a bath bomb and the fragrance is just overpowering.
I should not be able to smell it's a wash off product. I should not be able to smell it on myself for 3 days. So, yeah, and just creating the things that I wish existed. I think doing that, you're always going to do your best work when you're pursuing the things that you love and you're passionate about. And I think whenever you do that, you're gonna find excellence.
I totally agree. I actually have said that in multiple podcasts that I've recorded this fall. I've said that every time. You have to buy into what you're doing. You have to buy into your products. You have to really feel it because that's what sells them. You know, that authenticness that you're so excited about what you've created, that's what sells the product. I totally
Yeah.
agree with that. So, bath bombs look simple, but they're notoriously tricky to get right. Can you break down what's actually happening chemically when a bath bomb fizzes in the water?
Sure. So it's a chemical reaction, right? Just like saponification is a chemical reaction, there's a chemical reaction that's occurring between a weak base and an acid. So we have citric acid, and then we have baking soda that's acting as a weak base. And when an acid and a base come together, they create heat, they create a little bit of water, and they create carbon dioxide gas, which is where those little bubbles come from.
Okay.
So that's what's happening. In a stove, you complete the entire process yourself. Even if you do full process, you've emulsified it to the point that those are done. They're mixing together. It may take a few days for that chemical reaction to finish,
Mhm.
but you're presenting your customer with a completed product. With bath bombs, you have to get the chemical reaction started and then pause it and get it to stop. And so that I think is also part of what's challenging.
And I also hear too people say over and over and over is it's hard to get the right consistency to keep it hard until you put it into the bath. Like when I was making them, one of my troubles was it would be hard when I made it and then it would just crack and break. My customer would pick it up, it looks perfect and then boom, it's cracked. It's so hard to get them hard, and you seem to have figured that out.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you left baking soda and citric acid together in a bowl and walked away, especially in Houston where it's humid, right? It would eventually kind of harden up, but it would be soft, like what you're saying. You could easily crush it. And so that's where all those other ingredients kind of come in to help build that structure and to really lock it into place. And so there's all different types of things you can use. You could use starches. You can use cream of tartar, which is a great one to use.
Right,
Yeah.
right, definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about those binders and additives that you put in. So what are some of your favorite binders and additives and like what do they do in the, recipe?
So yes, a bath bomb has, you have your foundation, you have your baking soda and your citric acid. You have to have those. You cannot get around it. I've tested and tried. You have to have them. And then to that, we're gonna have starches that we could add, yoga starch or cornstarch. You can add clay. Generally suggest Howland clay because it's gonna be the most gentle, the least drawing and drying on your skin, and it can make the water feel really silky and nice. And then you have stuff like cream of tartar, which is mildly acidic itself. And so one of the things I tell people is that it's kind of the cement that goes between the baking soda and the citric acid because those molecules are a little bit big and the cream of tartar is very fine particle size. And so it can kind of go in between there and help them stick together a little bit better. And then to that, you also want to use oils. I see a lot of recipes where people use like 5 grams of oil for 3,000 gram batches of bath bombs. And really, you're shortchanging yourself when you do that. Number one, because you want the bath bomb to feel good in the water, but also using oil can help create that texture, that like very elusive texture you kind of mentioned. It can help create that texture without having to use too much true binder. And so when we're talking about binders, I mean, typically rubbing alcohol, so 91% or higher rubbing alcohol. A lot of people do use witch hazel. And the industry secret I'm about to tell you right now, we're just going to break it right now, is water. So I use distilled water in my bath bombs, and that gets that chemical reaction started. without taking it too far. And having that oil in there helps you not go past that limit where it's exploding out of your bowl. And then to that, there's surfactants and emulsifiers. So surfactants are going to create the bubbles, and then emulsifiers, gotta use those guys. Gotta use them. It's
Okay.
going to prevent the oil from floating on top and mica and lakes and stuff from stinging.
So you just said a lot. Let's break down what is the perfect bath bomb supposed to do? So you put it in the water. How long is it supposed to last? How is it supposed to make the water feel overall? And what is it not supposed to do? Like we touched on that, but like let's bring it home. So what is the perfect bath bomb supposed to do in the bath?
For me, the perfect bath bomb, when I put it into the water, it's going to have this huge reaction where I immediately see the bubbles starting to come out. And then as that reaction continues to go, it'll gradually even out. So for me, I don't like having these violent bubbles. So surfactants kind of help slow down that fizzing. And when that happens, that's when you get those really pretty colors and patterns on the water that we call bath art. Without having that slower reaction, you don't get to see that. I personally like for my bath bombs to last between 5 to 10 minutes. I've seen people who like them to last for 20 minutes. So it really just kind of depends. I've also seen people who want it to dissolve almost immediately. I worked with somebody who was making CBD bath bombs, and we wanted the CBD to be released very quickly into the bathtub. Right. And so we formulated based on that to make sure that it was dissolving very quickly instead of taking that longer amount of time. So it really depends on what you're looking for. But again, that's where I'm saying, like, make the thing that you want.
Right. So what is your take on putting botanicals like, petals or lavender buds or things like that into bath bombs?
They are beautiful. They are beautiful. I grew up too poor to be okay with some floating in the bathtub. Okay, because it like immediately I think a roach or a spider or something has fall. I cannot relax when I feel a little thing that has bumped up against me in the water. So I personally don't like them, but they're beautiful. And
They
a
are
lot of
beautiful.
people love doing them.
The one thing I don't like, if there's too much of it too, you have to clean out your bathtub at the end,
Yes.
nobody wants to do that. Like you were saying, you don't wanna put so much color that it stains the bath and you have to clean your bath. Because who wants to clean after their relaxing bath experience, right?
Nobody.
Nobody. So, how do things like humidity and temperature impact bath bombs?
Humidity is probably the biggest fail point for most people, and they probably don't even realize it. If I gave you a cake recipe, or if I gave you a soap recipe, and I'm in Texas on the Gulf Coast and you're in New York, it would still work for you, barring huge altitude changes and stuff like that, right? These things would still work. In with bath bombs, if you're 45 minutes north of me and it's drier where you're at, the recipe that I'm using today may not work for you. And in fact, the recipe I'm using right now at 11 o'clock may not work for me this evening at 7 p.m. And a lot of that has to do with humidity. And I think that that's one of the reasons people think bath bombs are just basically evil, right? They're like inherently hateful because they like to just change their mind. It worked yesterday, it's not working today, and why is it? And it's just this is so frustrating, I'm gonna throw it away. And
Right.
so your humidity plays a huge role because we're getting that chemical reaction started with water, and the ambient humidity that's in the air is gonna affect that. So it's
Right.
gonna affect how much binder that you feel like you need to use, and then it's gonna affect later on how your bath bombs develop, how they harden, and stuff like that.
How do you
So it plays a
recommend
huge thing.
Right, right. So how do you recommend, packaging the bath bomb once it's done and it's made to protect it from humidity and temperature?
Well, it depends on so many things, right? For me in Houston, I have to shrink wrap it. I use bioolefin, which is biodegradable and compostable. It breaks down within 2 to 3 years. I feel like my conscience can handle that. There are people who don't like that and they use paper bags and stuff like that. I think the biggest thing though is that you do want to protect them from that humidity. Packaging for cosmetics is a huge, huge part of the process and figuring out what works and aesthetically what you like and morally what you like. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, and there's a huge push we see makers, especially in this industry, going towards sustainable packaging like you mentioned, because the industry as overall is very environmentally conscious. And so I do see that there's a push for trying to source and find, and it's hard for small businesses to do. It's hard to find sustainable packaging, especially when you're talking about bottles and caps and pumps and things like that. Yeah. So, what are some common mistakes you see beginners doing when making bath?
Probably the biggest mistake I see is how people tub test their bath bombs. And I know that that seems crazy, right?
Mhm.
But bath bombs have a mild care time and they will perform differently on day one than they do to day seven, let's say. And so if you make your bath bomb, you think it's amazing, and you go and you put it in the sink immediately and it's fantastic, you may not realize that in 7 days, once it's curious finished, that the fizz is too muted,
Mhm.
or so it just doesn't even look like it's doing anything. Or you may test in a sink instead of testing it in a tub, and you may think like, oh, there's going to be too much color, there's going to be too much foam, like I have to go in and adjust things.
Mhm.
And really, it's going to be in a 55-gallon tub. It's going to completely change how it performs and how it
Right.
acts.
Right.
And so being satisfied and thinking that this thing that I just made right here is it, and I don't need to keep working hard on it. And then I think the other, like, just really big mistake I see people make is just where they buy and source their ingredients,
Yes.
because high quality ingredients make such a difference. And I just from the start, just use the correct stuff from the start. You can do like me and test everything under the sun. But I tell people a lot of times in our group or whatever that I tested it so you don't have to, right? And here's my results. I'm gonna show you. Here's the receipts from it. I promise you this didn't work or this did work.
Right, right. Let me dive into that a little bit more. When you were talking about curing time for a bath bomb, what is it exactly?
So the CO2, right? We're
Mhm.
waiting for that CO2 to finish kind of off gassing, and that takes about 72 hours.
Okay.
And so most bath bomb recipes are geared toward low humidity. So if you're keeping your area with low humidity and you live in an area and you're watching the calendar like you're trying to have a baby, right? And you're like, okay, here's the perfect time. It is right here. We got to do it right now. Like, then okay, you may be able to have kind of that unicorn moment. But if you're needing to do it all the time, then you're really having to pay attention to that. So having your humidity be too high when you're wrapping your bath bombs and it hasn't stopped off gassing, and then it's wrapped in shrink wrap and you squeeze it and it just pops, just
Right. So
yeah.
after you make them, you should leave them out just by
I do.
themselves like soap for a little while.
Yeah, I leave mine out. I like a minimum of a week, honestly. I think that that's kind of the best, point for me. And there's also this kind of thing in the bath bomb community where they want their bath bombs to float. And I feel like this is the soda ash of the bath bomb world, right? Where your customers probably don't know, have no clue what it's about, but we feel personally judged if another maker sees that our products have or don't have this thing. And so if you want them to, that 7 day mark, I feel like gives them the best chance to float. But I have ones that I've had on my shelf for, 3 or 4 weeks sometimes. So sometimes I'll let them just kind of sit there for a long time.
And yours are fantastic. You actually sent some up to our office after the conference and we used them and they're just perfect looking. They're the colors are perfect and they're hard and they really work well. So you definitely have perfected that recipe.
Thank you.
Yeah, which kind of brings me to my next question. There are a lot of bath bomb hacks floating around on the internet. So, are there any that really make you cringe? And are there any that have some value? Nice bottle, by the way.
Isn't this a lovely bottle? Hacks. So I will see mommy blogs that post that you can leave out the citric acid because it has the word acid in it, which is terrifying.
Just like
And
soap without lye, right?
sodium hydroxide,
Yeah,
I'm not going to rub that all over my body.
right.
No, guys, so you're fine. So yes, it has acid in it. It's terrifying. So we're going to use cream of tartar instead of citric acid. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to be less effective, and it's going to be way less fun. So
Right.
there's really no point in doing that. We also see a lot of use food coloring, 3 or 4 drops of food coloring. I suggest lakes. So we have lakes up here.
Mhm.
Lakes are what's going to hold that color for a long time. But then again, you're talking about chemicals, and people get very afraid of that. But lakes and dyes, so using food coloring, oh, don't do that, don't do that.
Right.
And 3 drops of clary sage and 2 drops of lavender and 2 teaspoons of this. Like, come on, guys, we got to get that. We got to get that measurement. We got to be doing that in grams. At the very least, do it in ounces, but grams are far more accurate. So Get that down in grams. How do you modify a recipe? If you're using 1 tablespoon of something, how do you break that into 30 seconds or make it scalable, right? So measurement, measurement, measurement. Drops, tablespoons, measure.
That's how I used to vet recipes because, like, I started 20, 25 years ago, and there wasn't as much information, certainly not Facebook or groups or anything like that. So I actually learned from books. I actually went to the library and took out books.
Tell me more.
And it seems like everybody in my era started with the same book too, Susan Miller Cavich's soap book. So I used to vet when I found recipes on the internet, I used to vet it by saying, okay, if that says teaspoons or cups or anything, it's probably no good, you know? And you're absolutely right. And even as cooking, like I love to cook and I love to bake. I use weights now cooking because it's far more accurate than doing
Yes,
cups and yes,
yes,
teaspoons.
yes,
Absolutely. So are there
yes.
any things out there that you do think have value? Any like hacks or anything out there that, besides of course your own tried and true method?
Well, I mean, I think that this comes down to, do you want to succeed at this? Because I think a lot of times I don't really wanna do it. It was funny, you were talking earlier about the things that you love and the things that you sell well. I used to joke that I could not save a sugar scrub to save my life, and I don't really like them. I don't personally use them, and they never sold. They just didn't sell well for me. So I think it just kinda depends. If you really wanna succeed at this, then you're gonna pursue kind of those things like the weights and the measurements and stuff like that. So as far as the hacks, if you're just trying to do this to make a sensory play environment for your kids, or you just want to do it for the weekend and just kind of dip your toes in it, then go for all the Pinterest recipes, It's have fun in the failure because sometimes that is part of the fun. But if you're ready to really do it correctly, then you're gonna need to go in there and take it head on the same
Yeah.
way you would do soap. And honestly, I can't say that there's a lot of hacks out there. It's just there's just not that are good. There's just not as many right now that exist.
That's a good point too. It's like you not only have to feel it, but you do have to know what is going on in your bath bomb. Like I honestly I didn't do that at the time. I was a soap maker, like you said. I'm a soap maker. So I really focused on soap. I loved making soap and I made the bath bombs because yeah, I wanted to add to my product line. So that's probably why I failed. Because I never dove into the chemistry like I did of soap. What's going on here? Why is this ingredient doing this and why is this ingredient doing that? But you have done that and I think that's great advice. If you're going to dive into something, you have to know what it makes up. Why is it doing what it's doing? Yep.
I think for me, part of it was that it was not easy. I expected it to be easy. And I tell people soap was my first love. It was the first time where I went to my closet and I pulled out all the half done knitted things and half done quilt squares and all these like other markers and all these other things, pulled it all out, gave it all away, and then just dove into soap. So soap making was my first love. I am so passionate about it. Bath bombs did not come easy for me. And that challenge really made me dig my heels in. And so I think that is part of it for me, is that it did not come easy. You have to decide that you want to do it,
Right.
but I think also sometimes you have to take the pressure off yourself that like, I'm going to do this to make money.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times when you're panicking, you're like, that's $8 going down the drain again. Whereas if you're just curious, I just want to know, why do people say that you can use this but not this? I just want to know why, and I also
Right.
want to know if they're right. And so I think that that's a lot of it too.
Yep, I agree. Agree completely. Once you've mastered that base formula, where can makers start to get creative with shapes and fragrance and colors and things? Like where can you start getting creative and how did you start to branch out when you got that base formula down?
Once again, this is one of those things where it can be anything you want it to be.
Mhm.
So if you want it to be the botanicals and the round ones, and then that's what like just turns you on about it, right?
Right.
That makes what makes you excited about it, then do that. For me, I love color. I love color. I love bright, bold colors. And so being able to create bright colors and have them stay and then have them make the water beautiful. So that's one way that you can really just kind of dive into it. You can do multiple colors in one. You can do colors on the outside with hidden colors inside. So there's kind of all these different ways that you can branch out with colors, painting them so that, it's very precise and it's in these very precise areas. With the advent of 3D printing, which,
Mhm.
3D printing is the language of our world now.
Right.
It is to this generation what the desktop computer was for our generation, right?
Right.
And so it is creating the world now for them. So, but with that came all these options for shapes and sizes and designs that you could do with your bath bombs. Honestly, the sky is the limit. Anything you can think of, it can probably be made now. And that is one of the things that is very, very exciting about it. It depends on what's satisfying you about the entire process, I think too. If money and like the bottom line is what you're after, then making like really cutesy shapes and hand painting them may not be the thing that you want to do, right? Because you need to like get them out and have 700 bath bombs made a day. But for me, what satisfies me about it is it gives me a place to be artistic and creative, and then I get to sell it, and then I can make some more, and it gives me excuses to buy new things and to play. And so for me, that's where I go with it.
So what is your favorite molds to use? And like how do you source your molds?
My favorite molds are typically going to be 3D printed. And I like further than that, I like what's called like a three-piece mold. So basically has a bottom plate, a shell that goes around it, and then a press piece that you put in. And then you can press it out and get a shape. There's several different iterations and versions of that. You can have a 3D printed one where you just put everything in and then turn it over. So if you have dexterity or mobility issues, that can be something that works really well for you. There's vacuum form ones, and those tend to be less expensive overall, which is good. And those are just, they take a form, they put the plastic over it, kind of like the Milky Way molds, right?
Okay.
So
So they're
yeah,
like
so
hard form molds.
form those plastic card form molds.
Mhm.
So a lot of people like those.
And then
Some
there's
people use
presses
metal
too,
hands.
right? Hydraulic
Presses.
presses. Yep.
Some of the presses now also have different shapes that you can have for your press. And the thing I like about the 3D printed molds is number one, I can get it resized if I want to. If I get it and it's this big, and I'm like, that's too big, I can get it sized down and make it smaller. But also just the options, right? There's so many
Right.
options for
For
those out
different
there.
shapes and yeah,
Yeah.
and like you said, you like the color and you like the artistic part of it, so that's what your passion is, you know? Yes, and some people, like you said, would probably just make a round one or, just a simple shape, but, like, do botanicals or things like that, yes, so there's
Yeah.
really like with soap, there's, like, so many different options.
There's a girl who she comes to conference and her whole thing is pierogies. Her
Mhm.
whole thing is pierogies. And so all her bath bombs, they're all shaped like pierogies, different shapes and colors and stuff, right? So you can do that. You can do a cute shape, but all of your bath bombs are that one cute shape.
Mhm.
Or you can be like me and you're like, well, today I'm doing mermaids, and
Right,
just
right.
kind of change your mind on the fly.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to go back a little bit. You were talking about sort of that balance between making an artistic product and making money and so scaling up. So my next question is what advice do you have for people who are scaling up their bath bomb production for sale without sacrificing the quality or consistency?
Well, if you're scaling up, you're always going to want to look at ways that you can kind of streamline the process. So if you can master batch. It's a little bit harder to master batch with bath bombs, but one of the things I'll do is set bags up. And so this bag is going to make 25 bath bombs. And I may have to pull each bag as I go, but it's still streamlining it for me so that I can make 200 bath bombs in a night if I need to as a single individual. Got a whole team and a whole production behind me.
Just like most makers are one person or maybe two-person shows. Yeah, so that's very consistent with the industry.
Yeah. So being able to just kind of streamline it like that. I also think it's really important to buy in bulk as early as possible
Okay.
because your labor costs may be high on this product, but if you can keep your cost of goods when it comes to your ingredients, if you can make that very minimal,
Mm.
then you're going to have this kind of huge return on that where you might not have it the other way. Another thing that a lot of makers who are like pushing out a lot of bath bombs at one time do is airbrushing. and there's stencils you can use. There's different things that you can do. And then that way, you can go down the line and just airbrush it.
Right. Is that the ones that you see with, like, the little drops of color and the little swirls of color, and they're kind of abstract?
You could. I've seen people who use it for painting maids and they're using the airbrush. I personally like the feeling of painting it by hand, but that's also feeding into what I get out of it, right?
Right.
And so I've seen people use airbrush, I've seen people use stencils, and then a lot of the mold makers now also have stencils. So that is an option. And but like you said, the splatters and the stuff like that, we do that with our shower steamers. I'm not going to sit there and paint a shower steamer, so I just do a little flick of paint on it. It's good enough.
Shower steamer, that's a whole other podcast. We might have to do that too.
Whole other podcast.
So your website, Bath Fizz and Foam, is a fantastic resource. Can you tell us about what makers will find there?
Yeah, Fizz and Foam. So Bath Fizz and Foam is a lot of fun.
Okay.
It started with bath bombs. People wanted to, Amanda and I had a bubble boot camp. We taught people how to make bath bombs. We taught people how to make bubble bars. And then we were just, hey, we did that, high five each other and we did that. And then after that, I kind of mentioned to her on the fly at one point, I was like, that's fun, but like those bubble bars I made, they're never going to dry because the recipe she had was great, but it didn't work for my high humidity. And so she was like, hold my beer. She jumped in and came back a couple weeks later and she said, try this recipe and it worked great. And so that became our first recipe that we're selling on our website.
Okay.
So we had our boot camp and we had Wonder Bar, which was this bubble bar recipe where you could scoop it, pipe it, roll it. And because previously all the bubble bar recipes were like, this is a bubble bar recipe just for scooping. And this one is just for rolling. And so having it kind of be this all in one thing, it was great. It was a Wonder Bar.
Right.
So that's where it started.
Okay.
And then now we've grown to the point where we have, like I said, we have like over 30 recipes. Sometimes we take requests. So people say, give me lip balms and lip glosses, and I want to know how to make those. Sure, there's free recipes out there. But I think one of the things people love is the way that we're able to break it down and explain it to them. And I'm going to talk to you in the ebook like you're my friend because I care about you. I want you to be successful, right? We're not lording something over you. And then sometimes the stuff in there is just stuff that like I was just laying in bed one night and I was like, I wonder if I can do this thing. And nobody's asked for it, but I just kind of want to try it. And so we also have stuff like that. We have bath crayons, we have Play-Doh, we have reusable bubble wand dough, we have lotions, we just have a kind of anything under the sun that you can think of. We're always kind of playing around and coming out with more stuff. So
You have some really
all
good
kinds
stuff.
of stuff. We formulate almost everything you can think of.
You've formulated and you've tried it and you've tested it and you know it works. So like if I go onto your website, like is it a membership? Is it a per item that I buy the ebook? How does that work?
So we have boot camps. So you can do the boot camps if you kind of want to like this whole deal package. But then we just have the recipes for sale, and then we have a Facebook group that has I don't know, like 25,000 people in it. And I think in a lot of ways that has been the root or kind of the soul of how we have been able to be successful, because there's tons of stuff out there that you can buy. You can buy recipes and stuff like that and find free recipes all over the internet.
Absolutely.
But having this like built-in, not only support from me, Amanda, and our moderators, but also just the community as a whole, because like I said, we're building this community of people who are being helpful and lifting each other up. And so that ripples out and they help the next maker.
And that's what I love. I love that about Facebook groups. Facebook groups is probably my favorite part of Facebook, that the groups exist. You can find exactly what you want. And a lot of them, especially in our community, are very well run. There's some that aren't, but there's a lot of them that are well run and people get actual real information. And we're, as makers too, we're all isolated, everybody's in their shop. So it's really nice to have that, to be able to reach out. Robyn, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who is frustrated with bath bombs, what would it be?
I'm gonna give you my pat answer.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the answer I give my friends, right? Take lots of notes. Be
Okay.
very precise and take lots of notes. Whenever I am working on formulations, I have a column of what I expect that I'm going to use. And then I have another column next to this as actual. So if it calls for 30 grams and I use 33 grams, doesn't seem like such a big deal until you start scaling that up, right? If that 33 represents 3% of a formula, right, then that could be very significant in the long run.
Right.
So you can take lots of notes, be very precise. Did you do the steps in a different order? Like I'll just kind of jot down, this is the process that I did. I'm gonna say like the temperature, the humidity in the room, right? Just kind of take like little notes like that, and you may begin to see those patterns happen. So that would be the answer that I would give probably anybody who was walking
Okay.
through. But if you were my friend, I would say keep trying, keep going, but also there is a point, like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to make it. I think that and you especially don't have to make it to make money off of it. I think that there's so much in our society where it's like, "Oh, you do something well, well, you need to monetize it." And you don't have to do that. You can just have fun and not do that. And I was especially thinking about this when you asked that because I was driving with my kids the other day and I was talking about a client that I've had for 5 years. And my husband said something about this individual, and I said, "You know what? They're freshies,
Mhm.
right? The little car fresheners.
Right.
Their freshies are amazing. They are doing so good on that. They have taken that and they are running with it, and I'm so glad to see that because I have been trying to teach them to make bath bombs for 5 years, and they just can't make a bath bomb for the life of them. They just can't. Like, I don't know. I can't help them with that, right?
Right.
And but they found something else that they're very, very good at. And so I think sometimes just, keep trying, but sometimes in that process you find that like maybe this isn't the thing I'm passionate about, but I have a good coach here who's people who are cheering me on no matter what I do. And so, that kind of would be my like keep trying, keep doing it, keep pursuing it, but also keep in mind that you don't have to do that. There are other things that you can do, especially if you're trying to add to your product line. There are things that you can do that have lower costs, that have lower labor, that are more enjoyable for you.
Right.
Don't fool yourself trying to make a product fit into your line. And then there's always wholesale. There's nothing wrong with buying wholesale and selling, white label products.
Absolutely, and I do think that some makers feel like they're cheating if they do that, but you're not, I actually had when I was had a company and I was selling, I actually had a soap maker friend who made melt and pour, and I made cold process, and I didn't really wanna make melt and pour, loved cold process, and she loved melt and pour. So we used to actually trade each other bars of soap, and I would add her bars to my line, and she would add mine to hers, and it just works, and it's not cheating. You can't do everything. You can't
Yeah,
be perfect at everything.
no.
And you absolutely need to give yourself a break. Mhm.
And trying to be perfect at everything. You're gonna do a really good job making yourself miserable.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to do everything. Do the things that you love.
Right. Well, it's been so great to have you. I've learned a lot about bath bombs today, and I hope everybody else did. Maybe we can have you back sometime to talk about shower steamers or bubble bars or something like that.
Yeah.
Love to.
How to color your bath.
That'd be great. Absolutely. So thank you, Robin. It was a pleasure having you today.
Thank you for having me, Lee. I really appreciate it.